Excellent. So we can go ahead and get started. I'll just introduce myself and then I'll pass it over to Joanna, since she is our nutrition expert here, and she can tell you a little bit about herself. So I'm Holly Benner, co-founder and coach at Meta Endurance, and we take a holistic mind, body, soul approach to training athletes. I've been a coach for over 12 years. I've been a lifelong athlete. My sport background ranges from, growing up as a swimmer, swam for NCAA, transitioned to rowing in graduate school, tried to have an Olympic berth at the 2012 team for rowing, rowed every single boat that there is, loved it, but transitioned to triathlon in my late 20s and had just, really made a career out of triathlon racing as a professional for 5 years before retiring at 38. And I love partnering with people about nutrition as athletes, as endurance athletes. The fourth discipline is eating, right? We need to fuel our bodies for what we do and how we want to feel. So leveraging an expert like Joanna is such a treat. And I'm happy that all of you guys joined us. And again, if you have any questions, throw them into the chat, come off, your black background, turn your camera on and interact with us. But I'll go ahead and toss it over to Joanna.
Thank you.
Sure.
So I am Joanna Hodorowska, and I am actually thrilled to be doing this webinar. And I'm actually honored to be working with Holly because we both have that body, mind, spirit approach to how we work with our clients. And just to give you an idea, I'm Joanna Hodorowska. My company is Nutrition in Motion, and I started it almost 20 years ago, a few years after I had adrenal exhaustion. So I'm going to give you my little how I discovered that the body can heal, and nutrition is a big part of it. And when I had my adrenal exhaustion, it was literally 5 months after I did my first Ironman. And if you felt exhausted, multiply that tenfold, and that's what adrenal exhaustion is like. And I went from doing the Ironman to I need a nap after walking to the mailbox and back. And when I was working with my alternative physician and a nutritionist back then, I basically learned there's 3 things in order to improve your health. You got to eat real food, balance your blood sugar, and manage your stress differently. And 20 years later, I'm still helping people eat real food, balance their blood sugar, and then manage their stress differently, except that I have added eating disorder recovery coach as well, and also energy work to help actually work through those hidden stressors, which is typically the childhood trauma that we've experienced, which would include even those smaller things of constant criticism or somebody attacked you, emotionally, rather than just the physical kind of trauma that most people are referring to. So it's really looking at the whole body and what is actually causing the issue. But for athletes especially, balancing the blood sugar is really one of those things that I work with all my athletes first to balance their blood sugar and eat real food. And then we dig deeper into what are the stressors. So today, I want to know from you, where are you from? You can put it in the chat. And what sport is your primary sport? And if there's any kind of topic that you want me to include in the future, then you can put that in the chat too. And we do have a question. I'm going to have you, Holly, and follow the question so that we can do that later. But I wanted to kind of give you my background so that you know that I'm an athlete too, and this was part of my learning, is that the body can heal. And those the 3 things that I had mentioned, eat real food, balance your blood sugar, and manage the stress differently, are really the 3 components that I find to be helpful for anybody, regardless of where they are. You don't have to have some kind of debilitating issue, but managing your blood sugar is really the first and foremost thing. So question is, how many of you are feeling like hungry all the time? And I guess I can't have everybody raise their hand, but you can even, I'm going to go through some of the symptoms of misbalanced blood sugar really is. So a lot of times it's you're hungry all the time. And even after eating, you feel like you're the bottomless pit. You could just keep eating. If you're an athlete, you feel like, you're just starving all the time. Your recovery is poor. You might feel tired and draggy. A lot of times you have poor focus. I know when I started balancing my blood sugar and started paying attention to how I was feeling, I felt like that my brain would just like drain of ability, and it would just be like that thermometer just draining, and then I couldn't come up with sentences. I couldn't come up with words. My focus was kind of shot. So these are actually signs of that mismanaged blood sugar. You can also be really moody. You could be easily irritated. And this is all from, spiking the blood sugar and then letting it drop. And then that spike and drop, you feel really great at the beginning. And then when you drop, you're tired, cranky, and irritable. And guess what? You crave sugar. So if you are the sugaraholic, or sometimes the carbaholic, that could be a symptom of, or a sign that you are not managing your blood sugar as well as you can.
And Joanna, I'm just going to jump in here with a personal anecdote really quick. I feel so seen right now. I feel like you're speaking to me, because there's been so many sessions where I've been out training, as endurance athletes, it's hours, right? And, if I'm trying to lose weight, or I'm not eating enough during my training, I find myself in the grocery store, right? Because it's the weekend, I need to do my grocery shopping, and I forget what I'm there for. I can't find anything. My brain's all fuzzy. My blood sugar's bottoming out. I would literally open up packages in the grocery store when I was grocery shopping and eat them. That's how hungry.
Eat them and then pay for them at the register.
Yes, yeah, of course. But that's how much my body was like screaming for fuel, and on that sugar roller coaster, and super hungry all of the time, even though I just ate dinner. Why am I hungry? Waking up at night from hunger is just, such an experience. I'm sure a few of us here can relate to that.
Yeah. And if you're having that all the time, then we really have to focus on, making a couple changes. So some of the other things is, you have extra weight. You put on weight really easily. And one of my things, it's not a technical term, but you actually feel fat. That is actually a sign of mismanaging your blood sugar, because the body's not actually metabolizing properly. So you're always feeling like, you know what, I can't lose weight unless I'm, starving myself, or I'm restricting my calories excessively, or I'm exercising excessively. And it seems to be like you have to do all three of those in order to kind of get to your race weight, or to the weight that you are feeling good at. So it's a lot more challenging if you're mismanaging that blood sugar to get to that healthy weight. And once in a while, if you miss a meal, that's okay. But if you're constantly doing it and you're constantly feeling hungry, that's the thing. If you're training and you're used to going for an hour and a half or two, and suddenly like you're bottoming out at less than an hour, that's actually mismanaging your blood sugar, because you didn't fuel your body. A lot of challenges that especially endurance athletes have is if you're mismanaging that blood sugar, you are craving more calories and need more calories and more sugar actually while you're training. So if you are balancing your blood sugar, and this is one of the benefits, which we'll get to in a minute, you're actually able to burn your fat stores for energy. And so you don't need as many calories to take in during your training, and your endurance actually starts to increase without even extra effort. If you're recovering poorly, that could be a mismanagement of the meal timing and blood sugar as well. And one thing that most people don't realize is that mismanaging your blood sugar is actually a huge stress on the body. So it really creates more fatigue on the body, and really your body is energy. So yes, you're getting calories from your food, but your body's now using up the rest of the energy in the body to kind of deal with the stress of mismanaging the blood sugar, rather than helping you be your best self. Make sense? And for people that are racing, the more carbs and the more mismanagement you have in your with your blood sugar, the more GI distress you actually have. And you may actually have a lot of GI distress even in everyday situations too, just because of that, you know, yo-yo mismanaging of the blood sugar. Does that make sense? You see, we have lots of questions in here.
Yeah, Dave has some good questions.
Yeah, there's some good questions. And if you're okay, do you want the questions answered now, or do you want me to just wait till later? We'll just.
I would say actually, you want to go ahead and let's jump into the questions and see if maybe that'll roll into maybe some other people have some questions.
Okay, so Dave is asking, are there certain fuels that are good alternatives to gels, and how to recommend phasing in a new fuel for gut training if changing from one to another? So that's kind of like 3 questions all in one, but it's all good. So my favorite, this is one of the funniest stories. When I was doing Ironman back in 1999, you know, I was like, you know, I don't understand why all these people are talking about, you know, boiled potatoes and salty water. Like, don't they know about Cliff Bars? Like, these bars are like the greatest thing ever. What are they thinking? And then, of course, after my adrenal exhaustion, it's like, potatoes are the bomb, you know, like some of the real food options are potatoes. You can either bake them, roast them. I wouldn't consider, you know, potato chips being a good option just because of the fat, but potatoes in any way, shape, or form are really a great real food option. And then a lot of times instead of gels, my suggestion is to actually use dates. They'll actually balance the blood sugar pretty well. They're very easy for the body to digest, and they will kind of give you that same, you know, quick energy that gels have. So my suggestion is to first, you know, take your gels with you and take whatever bars you want with you. I personally like the RX bars as if I'm going to take a bar, but the suggestion for me is change one thing at a time. If you're going to change a gel, change just the gel. Don't change the food at the same time, and see if you notice a difference between the gel that you used and the gel that you used prior. Or you try the dates instead of the gels and see how that works. Another option now is you could even put in your water bottle, you could put a little bit of apple cider in, not apple cider vinegar, but the pressed cider from apples. That can be something that you can dilute that in your water bottle, and that can actually be a quick energy source as well. Make sense? Any recommendations for fruits that have lower glycemic impact, but will satisfy the sweet tooth craving? So my favorite fruit is actually dates. There you go, dates. It's the answer for everything. Some people, and you know, the cool thing about dates is that if you eat the dates, they do give you that sweetness. I actually now have a source from California, so every year I buy fresh dates. They are so stinking good. And then I put them in the freezer, and then I have them all year long. But the dates are actually really nice and sweet, but they also have a natural fiber to slow down the absorption of the sugar. Grapes, you know, they're high in sugar, they're nice and sweet. A lot of people like that, or raisins. But the challenge is if you eat too many raisins or plums, or, you know, they're like prunes, you can actually get some GI distress as a result of it. So it could be good if you have, you know, a handful of them, but if you have, you know, a cup or two, you might have some GI distress that goes along with it. Dates, for whatever reason, don't have that issue. Figs will also be, they're really nice and sweet, but they can also trigger really loose stools, and that's probably not what you're wanting, especially if you're moving. Some people do well with bananas. My nickname happens to be Joanna Banana, and I can't eat bananas. I can do maybe a half a banana, or put it in banana bread, but I can't really do that. So
I have a question about maybe like underripe bananas with like resistant starch. And of course there's like various grades of like the ripe banana stage. but could a banana be a less ripe banana be a lower glycemic impact?
I think, yeah, it definitely can be. And same thing like with most fruits and vegetables too. The more ripe it is, the more sugar there is.
Mm-hmm.
So even, an apple would be a good option depending on what kind you want, plus a pear. But if it's a soft pear, it's going to spike that blood sugar a little bit more. Pineapples are really good, but then they can be acidic if you have a large quantity of it.
Mm-hmm.
So does that help answer your question, Dave?
Yep. Thank you.
Okay. Awesome. And then you have one more question. How do you view occasional fasting, such as intermittent fasting, one or more? I'm actually going to talk about that well, you know what? Let me just talk about it now, because we're going to go into, how do you balance the blood sugar, right? I told you about the symptoms. I could tell you about the benefits of balancing the blood sugar too, but I kind of went over some of that. So in terms of the occasional fasting, I think occasional fasting is fine, but being an eating disorder recovery coach, you don't want to be starving yourself on a regular basis and kind of setting yourself up for potentially triggering an eating disorder behavior. So one of the things that in terms of intermittent fasting, the older we get, intermittent fasting actually starts to make more sense. Most of the time, I do suggest that do your work. If you're doing your workouts first thing in the morning or within an hour in the morning, you don't really need food for that workout. But you want to make sure you have your recovery meal within an hour to an hour and a half after you're finished with your meal. So you could even consider that as intermittent fasting. Like that's kind of what I did this morning. But then I focused on, okay, I'm going to balance that blood sugar with the correct meal and the right balance of the meal after my workouts. So the intermittent fasting can be actually very helpful in order to get the body's metabolic system to work better. And it's really probably 8 hours eating to 16 hours not eating is the best window. So for some people it's 9 till 6. No, that's 9 hours. 9 till 5, or it could be 10 till 6. And you can just play around with it, but see what happens with your cravings and your body in terms of how does it feel. But if you're doing a workout in the morning, you definitely want to be focusing on, I want that recovery meal and that balanced meal after my workout. And you can take a date or two beforehand, or a half a baked potato or something like that to beforehand.
Yeah, and just kind of bookend onto that. Sometimes I like to refer to intermittent fasting as sleep, because it's
that is the majority
process.
of it. Yeah,
that's the majority of it. So a good rule of thumb is to make sure that you're finishing your evening meal 2 to 3 hours before bedtime, and then you're just kind of adding on some hours into that sleep intermittent fasting window. And then if you have a really low like a low intensity or aerobic session in the morning, absolutely, you don't need to fuel it, especially if it's under an hour. Of course, hydrate as soon as you get up, because you're going to be dehydrated. But I would just say the caveat there is, if it's a long session, if it's something with high intensity over an aerobic threshold, you want to try to get in a little bit of sugar. It can help you with performance. And again, this is kind of just in general over the long term.
Yeah, and that's something too where it depends on the individual, because I've had clients where if they had to go for a run, interval run or an endurance run, they couldn't eat beforehand. But if they went on the bike ride, they could eat something beforehand.
Yeah, good point.
So it really depends on each individual, but you pretty much in the morning still have enough for a half hour to 45 minutes of activity. And then you want to be focusing on, okay, maybe I need to take some gel. Maybe I need to take some of that apple juice or apple cider in my water. Maybe I do need a couple of dates just to be able to kind of work through the issue. And yes, electrolytes, that'll be a whole nother hydration talk that we do later.
Mm-hmm.
But that's definitely a key option where you will ask to you will run out of, you'll basically dehydrate before you run out of fuel. So in terms of the basic principles, this is going to be this is how it's very easy to do blood sugar management. And I'm supposed to do this in 6 minutes. How about that? So I'm actually going to do this little whiteboard. You know what? I already did this the other day. So think of this as your plate. So, you know, you can think of it as a Circle K. So half of your plate you want to have vegetables. You want a little bit of protein, a little bit of carbohydrate, and a little bit of fat. So for the most part, each meal, and we're talking about each meal has about this ratio. So you can either make it a mini meal or a bigger meal, but depending on how hungry you are. But generally speaking, it's about a cup of vegetables, and it could be cooked or raw. It could be a half a cup to 3/4 cup of carbs. And those carbohydrates are the grains, root vegetables, lentils, beans, and fruits. So it's not a half a cup of each one of those. It's a half a cup combination of all those. If you're a male, it might go up a little bit more, but generally speaking, it's going to be somewhere between half and 3/4 of a cup. And then about a half a cup of protein. And then 1 tablespoon to 1 ounce of fats, depending on if you're using olives, oils, butter, ghee, nuts, seeds, or avocado. But you know you don't need to skimp on the oils, because that actually helps to balance the blood sugar. And one of the other things that I want you to just kind of understand is when we're looking at the food, I want you to start looking at your food like, okay, I have a bagel for breakfast. What do I need? That's a carbohydrate. So what do I need to do to add to this meal to slow down the absorption of the sugar? You add protein, you add fiber or vegetables, and you add fat. So if you had a bagel, you can actually just make your own little mini sandwich in the morning. Some people will do, you know, an egg with cheese and maybe some sauteed spinach with it, and voila, you have yourself a balanced meal. Some people will consider peanut butter or a nut butter enough, because peanuts and nuts have some carbohydrates, some protein and fat, but others might not get, it'll still spike the blood sugar more than they want. Does that make sense? So who wants to, I think I had asked to share one of your breakfast meals. Anybody want to share what they typically have for breakfast? I guess nobody wants to volunteer. We're not going to pick on you. We're just going to help to modify it so that everybody can learn this is how to make it a little bit better.
So I can share what I eat almost every day. I am a creature of habit, especially when it comes to my breakfast and lunches, and I let dinners be the wild card.
Creative part.
So I have a whole food. I have an Ezekiel English muffin. So those are the frozen whole grain muffins. Those are my favorite. Ezekiel English muffin. I have 2 eggs and about a half a tablespoon of butter, and I will either have strawberry jam. If I have a sweet tooth, or I'll have avocado, like smashed guacamole. That is like my go-to breakfast almost every single day that I eat after training.
Okay. So,
and
yeah, so generally that is actually pretty balanced. If you could add, you know, some kind of sauteed vegetables to it, that would be, you know, ameliorating it, or you could commit to having that at lunch.
Hi, Kathy. Did you want to share your breakfast?
So Rachel says she usually has a smoothie with beets, blueberries, and a muffin or 2. So when you look at that, Rachel, it's basically all carbohydrates. I mean, they're healthy carbohydrates because beets have are great for recovery, and so are blueberries. But that smoothie, is mostly fruit, and then muffins are typically all carbohydrates as well. So what can you do to add either vegetables to it, a protein, or fiber? And one of my suggestions is add some ground flax seeds to that smoothie, and add a handful or two of spinach, baby kale, or some kind of a green. You could also, add, and I'm not saying put the chicken into your smoothie. That's going to just be gross. But you could actually have maybe 2 ounces of chicken or fish from dinner, and have that as ameliorated protein to go with your with the shake. Or you could have an egg, either hard boiled or sautéed or fried or poached. Does that make sense? So those are some of the things that you can do to kind of make that that shake last a little bit longer. And you could also put some flaxseed oil into it, or an avocado, to up the fat. And some people will put in, peanut butter or nut butter to add the fat as well. But that could be an option to help with that that smoothie. I typically don't suggest protein powder. I mean, in the smoothie, it's fine, but the challenge is that protein powder is actually going to be absorbed really quickly. So you might not get the full benefit. You'll get the benefit in terms of recovery, but it won't really help to balance the blood sugar as well as an actual piece of protein. Does that make sense? We have a couple other things. So Dave has 2 to 3 eggs, 2 small potatoes, a salad with balsamic and avocado. That's your breakfast? Because that sounds like my kind of breakfast. That's pretty much how to do it. For Dave, yes, you can get away with 2 or 3 eggs. I can only do 1 egg at a time, unless I've done a really hardcore training, but I haven't done that for a while. But that's like the perfect blend: 2 or 3 eggs, 2 small potatoes, a salad with balsamic and avocado. So you got the whole recovery meal in there, and that will help to balance the blood sugar. Heather usually eats 2 egg cups. Is it eggs with cottage cheese on whole wheat pita, and then a handful of spinach and arugula? So you pretty much have your balanced meal with that as well. So good job, Heather. And then we have a 5-grain oatmeal, handful of frozen fruit, including blueberries, some almond milk, and some almonds or walnuts. So that particular meal, for Kathy, you might need a little bit more protein, like a concentrated protein. The almond milk and the almonds and walnuts do have some fat and protein to slow down the absorption of the sugar from the oatmeal and the frozen fruit. But you might also add some flax seeds or some chia seeds or maybe even some oat bran in order to add some of that fiber to slow down the absorption of the sugar. And one of my clients actually would add squash, like butternut squash or acorn squash, into their breakfast oatmeal. So that could be an option too. I'm not sure you would be happy of putting kale or spinach into your oatmeal, but it's something you could try and see if it actually makes it better and makes you feel better. So I have a little story. Years ago, I would swim, then I would teach swim lessons, and then I would teach swim lessons, then swim, then teach swim lessons again. And so I would take with me a couple of pieces of bread or toast and put some almond butter on there with some bananas. And I got to tell you, it's really, really good. But I was always starving like 90 minutes later. And so I thought, what can I do to balance the blood sugar better with this one? So I replaced the banana and just added broccoli is my favorite vegetable. So I just took some steamed, cold steamed broccoli with me. And I ended up eating just that steamed broccoli after I ate the PB without the J. And I balance my blood sugar better with that broccoli than I did with the banana. So, it's these simple little changes where I replaced one thing with another because I didn't like being starving a couple hours after eating. And adding the broccoli instead of the banana allowed that meal to actually balance my blood sugar better. And I was not hungry for about 2.5, almost 3 hours. Does that make sense? So those are some of the things where I know it sounds really weird. That's what you're going to do for breakfast. But you know what? If you want to balance the blood sugar, it's always about thinking, okay, how do I, if I have a carbohydrate, how do I add protein? How do I add fiber? And how do I, and sometimes the vegetables and fat to balance out that blood sugar so that I'm not hungry 2.5, 2 hours or less after that meal. And that's typically what I do with my clients, is work with you to actually make those changes. Because once you can start modifying what you're doing and really notice the difference, you'll be able to make that change more permanent. Make sense? And I see that we're over time, we're an hour and 35 minutes.
Yeah, all of this was great. I think it's an awesome introduction to blood sugar management as athletes, some, actual ideas and takeaways for how to start implementing changes to what you're already doing with breakfast to start to balance your blood sugar and feel better, have more energy, all of those things. Yes, pumpkin, it's seasonal. So, if you guys would like to come off mute and let us know what topics you'd like to hear next. Is it, kind of a version or a 200 level course on blood sugar? You want to hear more about this, more detail? Is it something else? Please let us know. I'm happy to partner with Joanna on upcoming webinars to help you guys feel your best at sport, at life, so you can support your body to do what you love to do. We're made to move, and food is all around us, and knowing how to work with both so that we feel our best is what it's about. It's definitely why me and Joanna are here. So let us know if you have any topics that you'd love our experts help with, and we'll make sure to put some content together for you guys.
Yeah, and if you have any questions specifically about, what your diet looks like and you want to kind of work through it, I'm gonna, in the follow-up emails, you can actually contact me through a Calendly link, so that you can set up a 15-minute chat, and then we can talk about what you're doing and see if it makes sense to actually work together. But we could just kind of look at some of the things that you're doing and just kind of make those small changes, because balancing that blood sugar, it really is the beginning of a whole new way of feeling and a whole new way of experiencing your body and what it can do in a new way. Mm-hmm. And it's being, my biggest thing is it's got to be realistic, because there's some things where, okay, I put broccoli into my breakfast, but not a lot of people are going to do broccoli for breakfast. It's something where at some point I just, started experimenting with it, and I'm like, oh, this is awesome. 20 years ago, I would not be eating broccoli for breakfast. I was eating, bagels with cream cheese, and that was it. And with bananas and a glass of orange juice. And I wondered why, why my blood sugar was tanking all the time. It's because that's all I did was eat carbohydrates. If I look back at that log, you'd be like, oh my God, she's a carboholic. Well, yeah. And I would literally be fighting my weight constantly. So, one of the biggest benefit of balancing your blood sugar is you can be at a healthy weight, and food doesn't, consume food does consume your life anyway, because you've got to fuel your body. But once you start looking at it from a fueling standpoint, and being able to balance that blood sugar really just helps to minimize the stress and help the body to just function a lot better. And I'm here to help you do that. So
thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your time this afternoon with our expert here. And we will post this to our sites, where hopefully you learned about this in the first place. But please feel free to reach out if you have questions. Let us know if anything comes to mind. If you have questions that you think of later today, tomorrow, next week, feel free to reach out. We love helping people feel the best that they can. So we're happy to stay on if you have any questions that you'd like one-on-one time with. Otherwise, thank you so much for taking some time. Thank you for staying over. And
Yeah,
we
and
hope
thank
that
you.
you're able to learn something from today. Go ahead.
Yes, and I did put the Calendly link for that into the chat in case anybody wants to kind of copy that and set some time up with me. But thank you for joining us. I hope you got what you needed from it, and we look forward to seeing you again in the future.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Thank you.